Hi friends, it's Jessie with Elysian Homestead, and today I am starting pepper seeds. Here are my soil blocks. My husband makes them for me. He's really good at it, so I just give him that job. And since most of them are for my seed sale, I pot them up into the 6-pack trays to sell. My husband did make these a few days ago, so they are a little more dried out than I would like. So I just water them in first to get them nice and moist. This is my water for my seed blocks because you can't be too rough with them or they will fall apart. So there's that. We're going to start with things like California Wonder. So I just put one pepper seed per block. And then if it doesn't germinate, I don't have empty spaces in the 6 cell. I just have empty spaces here. And then I just throw that potting mix back into the container of potting mix and keep using it. So here's how I do this. We're just going to do one together. Sorry, we're just going to do one block together so I can show you how I usually do it. It's pretty self-explanatory. The little seed blocks, I don't know, you can't really tell, but they have a little indent in them and that the seeds fit in there perfectly. So I just put one little seed. Of course, that one falls. There's that. I have one left, but I have more. So I'll probably plant 20 squares. I'll probably do 3 or 4 blocks of those. So that's 60 to 80 of the California Wonders. I probably will only keep 20 for myself, and then the rest will be for my seed sale. And then I label them, just simple label, permanent marker. Put it on there. Sorry. And then I use vermiculite and cover it up. These are pretty big seeds, so I can put quite a bit on there and it'll be fine. If they're small seeds, then I put less. But this just helps keep it moist. So you water it in again. Once you get it wet, it does blow off a little bit, but once you get it wet, it's fine. I have sticking out, so there we go. And that is how I start the majority of my seeds. And after I'm done with this whole tray, they'll go into the seed starting station until they are big enough for me to up pot. I'll up pot them, keep them in the seed station for maybe about a week, and then they'll go out to the greenhouse. So I live in zone 5B, and I start my seeds a lot later than people in higher zones, obviously. But I get a lot of questions every year on when do I start? When do I start? Or I see a lot of people, a lot of like friends on Facebook or acquaintances on Facebook or just in some local groups will be starting their seeds already, or like I've seen several people already start them this year, like several weeks ago, which is extremely early. So when I get asked, how do I know when? How do I know when? I have three answers. My first and the one I use mainly, I guess, is I just Google Farmer's Almanac planting by zip code, and it will literally tell me exactly when to start what seeds for my area. And I go by that. I write it down and I put it in my garden planner. I put exactly when I'm starting them, when I'm planting them out, if I'm direct sowing them. I put it all in that notebook. It all comes in the page from the Farmer's Almanac. You can do that with flowers as well. The flowers doesn't give you the exact date, but it says these flowers this many weeks beforehand, and then you just Google what your last frost date is, if you last expected frost date, if you don't know what it is, and then you count backwards. And that is, you can do that with the seed packets. On any of these seed packets, they'll say start 8 weeks before your last frost date. So then you just take your last frost date and then you would count backwards. Almost all seed packets have that. So that is the second method. Farmer's Almanac by planting by zip code is the first one. The seed packet is the second one. And my third one that I use regularly is seedtime.us. I have that on my phone, or no, I have that on my iPad. And I use that for my garden planning. My garden, I can lay my whole garden out on that, but I can also put in plants. I can put in different varieties. Like before I start all of this stuff, I take all of my seeds, decide what I'm planting, and then I put each individual variety into seedtime.us. And then it will also tell me, it tells me all sorts of things. It reminds me, start your seeds. It reminds me to cultivate the beds. It reminds me to fertilize. It reminds me to plant the seeds out. It's really a great tool. I do pay for that one. There is a free version, which I have not used. So I do pay for it because I have more than one garden. And in order to have more than one garden layout, you have to have the upgraded version. But there is a free version, I believe, that just has one garden layout with it. I really enjoy it. And then when I'm planting out my peppers, not just my peppers, then when I'm planting out my plants, I make sure I take my iPad out with me and I label, like, these tomatoes went here, these peppers went here. Like, so then when I forget, because I do like to put it on paper and pencil as well, but that I either lose or it gets worn or something gets spilled on it. So then I have two ways so I know where everything is in my garden. But it does give you reminders, which is really nice. I love having the reminders because I'm really bad at remembering. So I usually have my garden calendar laid out all through, probably starting in the end of February. I have it laid out through probably September, October on my counter for me to remind me, plant this, succession plant this. Here's when we're starting our fall crops. Here's when we're doing this. Here's when we're planting this out. Oh, this should be ready to harvest at a certain time. That I generally get from seed time, is about when it should be ready to harvest. And then that reminds me to look at certain things or see how they're doing. And there's no exact science to it because everything is going to be different depending on the conditions in which you're growing, but it's very, very helpful. So those are my tools on how to plant, how to know when to plant, and how to organize everything into one area or more if you're me. If you have any other questions, please feel free to leave them down below, and I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. But I'm going to continue planting my peppers today. Thank you for joining me.